Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Rhiannon, and today I wanted to take you on the little journey I took to start my very first witchy herb garden. So I'm just gonna grab some breakfast and get started. I always like to start days like this with a little bit of tea and a really nice meal, and I'm gonna sit down and plan out my garden and kind of chat with you all with how I am hoping this to turn out. I have been waiting for spring to come, and by the time you guys see this video, it'll already be into summer and nearly almost over into fall. And I was planning for this video to come out a little earlier, but we had some family things happen and I had to go a little bit on hiatus. So I still wanted to share this video as the first installment of my witchy herb garden series, where I kind of take you along while I learn how to garden and how to develop my own herbs for my witchcraft apothecary, both for my online shop and for my everyday practice. So this is just me going over the seeds and taking you on a little bit of the winding journey that was the mess of my backyard. So grab a cup of tea and sit back and relax, and I hope you enjoy. I'm going to be showing you some of the seeds that I'm going to start sowing into my garden. It's just going to be me planting and chit-chatting and reminiscing on spring and how much I can't wait for it to fully appear here where I live. I still have my last frost date by the end of May. I think it's May 29th or 30th. So I still have almost an entire month left before I can even really take anything fully outside. So I'm going to get started with my inside garden and get things going on the inside, and then hopefully by the time the last frost is gone, we'll be able to really start flourishing in the garden. This is a really big step for me because personally, one day I would like to have my full licensed herbologist course under my belt, and this is just kind of a small stepping stone for me to start that journey. For the first little bit, I'm going to start off with some of the vegetables. So I want to start getting the cauliflower started and the kale. I really want to grow a good portion of my vegetables this year. My partner and I started a journey to become vegetarian a few months ago, and it's going very strong, and I would like to supplement our diet and not have to buy so much fresh vegetables from the grocery store. I'm not liking the plastic waste with that, so I'm really hoping to be able to start doing that fresh during the summer, and then being able to eventually hopefully learn how to do preserves over the winter, so that I can preserve a lot of the hardy root vegetables that I grow throughout the year eventually. Who knows how that will go this year, but maybe eventually I'll be able to do it. There's spinach, as well as I want to do zucchini and of course some carrots. Now for the fun part that you all came here for is the main herbs. Now eventually I will expand on these, however I just got the basics right now. So first off I have is white sage. I am an indigenous person. I am Métis, and this is something that I'll be learning to utilize and I'd like to grow for myself, and is something that I'll be initiated into the ritual of learning how to actually properly smudge with white sage. So this is something that is going to be utilized a lot for myself. Lemongrass, of course, for cooking, but this is also really great in bundles and in braids for cleansing. Lavender, of course, I'm obsessed. This is going to be an indoor plant for sure, but I will transfer it outside during the summer to enjoy the outside. However, this is going to be in a single planter so that I can reap its rewards all year long. And this one is one of the more fragrant versions, so I'm really excited for this, and it's going to be great in teas. Of course, no garden is right without mint and peppermint, and of course the most beautiful chamomile. This is going to be lining a lot of my beds. I'm going to want it everywhere. I actually use chamomile quite a lot in my practice. Then rosemary, yet again another plant that I'll be having indoors year round. And then of course, thyme and echinacea. Now, eventually I would like to branch out into being able to do more edible flowers and be able to have those in our meals, as well as to dry them and use them in my practice. Along with that, I have calendula, several versions of it as well, and then I have this really pretty status mix. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure how to work that into the garden yet. If any of you have started your own gardens, definitely let me know in the comments below and give me any suggestions, because I'm open to your advice as I am a first-year gardener. And then of course I want to bring the pollinators to my garden, so I do have a bee garden blend as well as a butterfly garden blend, wildflowers, and these are gonna be grown wild. I'm going to kind of have like the look of an overgrown garden a little bit, so I will have these like strewn throughout the garden, even behind the garden beddings, so that I have a bit more wild feel to my garden. I really enjoy the wildness of an overgrown garden, and I know it'll probably bug some of you, but it's like my favorite thing. And then of course I got some wild western yarrow. I got these little sweet peas because they remind me of my grandfather's garden, and this is actually just starting the garden itself. It really is quite exciting for me because my grandfather was a massive gardener his whole life, and he took care of his mother's garden as well as my great-grandmother's garden on his wife's side, and his own large garden. He had a large garden with his bungalow home that he had, and it was huge, and he took care of all three of those year-round for the majority of the time. And sweet peas, he always had these exact kind growing in our backyard, and my grandmother's like selling and moving from her house that I grew up in, where these flowers grew my whole life. So this is something that's going to help remind me of that, and help me feel a little bit more at home when our family home is sold. So yeah, that's a little bit of the gist of my herbs that I'll be doing. My garden is a complete disaster right now. I'll insert some clips here of how it looks right now. I still have to get rid of the sand box that's in the corner there. That really is just trapping all the leaves and snow and water, and I would love to be able to paint the little garage that we have out there and line it with some garden lights maybe. Hopefully my mother-in-law to be eventually will let me do that. We'll see. This is kind of just a start on the beginnings of my little mini apothecary. Hopefully I'll be able to start supplying my own shop with some small things. I do have 3 different versions of sage. I do have the white sage, but that will just be strictly for myself. But I do have 2 different types of green and blue sage. So those will also be grown, and those are the ones that'll be used in my apothecary or online shop. So here's a little overview of my garden now and before. So before it was such a mess. I had my mother-in-law and my boyfriend help me move the sandbox from the corner. And yeah, my first task was just to move these big old bins. This whole task took me about 3 hours. I ended up having to get my neighbor to help me move the last 2 because they were so heavy. I couldn't get it over the cement. And while I was cleaning up, I realized I had a very bad ant infestation. And that's what I'm saying to my neighbor here.
I have an ant infestation.
I normally don't condone killing insects, but I had about 4 or 5 different species of ants, and I also had the biting kind, and last year I had a swarm of hornets and wasps, and I got attacked every time I entered my yard, and it's the same thing this year. Plus I don't want to be swarmed or overrun or have my garden like derooted because of ant tunnels. So I did pour some hot water over the nest that I found, and I did put out some traps for them. And hopefully once I amend my soil, it'll kind of take care of that. And I also ended up having a squirrel problem, so my hanging baskets ended up getting completely torn up by a local squirrel, so I learned my lesson there. So I just appreciated the day the best I could here, and ended up having to run to the trash to get rid of all my bags of soil that I had emptied because we had a tornado and a severe thunderstorm warning. It looks beautiful, doesn't it? But it got very bad very quickly. And my neighbor was so kind to give me some giant mammoth sunflower seedlings that she had started, and I'm going to save the seeds if they bloom this year and plant them next year. And then that's where the sandbox was, in between the garage and the deck, so I'm hoping to put an arched trellis there, and maybe even my bench there, and weather treat it. And just kind of have like a deity section as you sit underneath the arched trellis and reflect on Artemis and my deities. And this is kind of like a preview of how it looks now. I'm not super happy with the wildflowers I threw in. I might have started them too late. We shall see, but they kind of look like a mix of a bunch of weeds, so I'm not sure if I just got a bad batch. And these are my mammoth sunflowers. They're so close to starting to flower. My neighbor's is already starting to flower in some of her parts of her yard, so I'm very excited. And there's my little calendula. I'm so excited for her to blossom as well. So yeah, that was the start of my very first garden. Not very much is very successful, but thank goodness for these flowers because they will bring a lot of beauty and joy to my yard. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and make sure you hit the notification bell so you don't miss out when I post. I post every week, and it's all about witchcraft, paganism, and the spirituality that I love so much. And sometimes now and then a little bit of witchy gardening. I'll see you guys in my next video.